We don't have that kind of access. And so this is a very real problem, which is why I am organizing people to send a coalition letter to Congress so that they understand that this is having an effect on small software businesses now, and that we urgently need to do something about this. This can't just keep getting pushed down the line and bundled in with other things. It's not a big business issue. It is a small business issue that is impacting small businesses across the country. Who people now, like, I mean, I've talked to people who are saying they're using their personal credit cards to pay their taxes. They're using like lines of credit. They're like laying people off. They're freezing hiring. Like it's bad. And the thing is that we have to fight this because everybody loves small businesses. Like, just everybody loves us, right? And we are getting run over by a truck by this. And so if there's any hope of getting this through Congress, we have to speak up on this.
One characteristic emerged as a significant predictor of success. It was grit.
All right, cool. We're all on. Hey, Michelle. I was just telling Kyle right before this that I'm a very one-track minded person. So like whenever I get into something, I like really get into it. And that can be good and bad, right? So like a week ago, this is all I could think about. And so I was every single day, like pretty much the whole day, it was very distracting because it was all I could think about. It's all I could talk about. It's all I could read about. And over the past like week or so, I've completely shut that out of my mind, trying to just act as if like nothing's happening because I have to like just focus on, our business. So this is all coming. I'm coming back to this now, and I'm like reading through your entire thread so that I bring myself back into that mindset that I was in. But yeah, we just wanted to just record like a kind of a little bit different episode than we normally do. Normally we're talking about like a range of topics, especially if we bring on a guest. But in this particular scenario, we wanted to talk about something that I think either you haven't heard about yet as an entrepreneur, or maybe you have heard about it, but just kind of going into how bad Section 174 is for entrepreneurs, whether you're in a tech business or, I guess when I read that Wall Street Journal article, like I didn't even realize that it would affect a lot of other types of small businesses as well, like life science companies and things like that. But it's pretty devastating for tech businesses. So most of the people that listen to this podcast. So we figured we'd bring on the expert and, just let you kind of talk a little bit about, just to start for the folks that don't know what Section 174 is, just kind of go into what that is and, sort of why this is so devastating for companies if it's not repealed soon.
Yeah. And first, I should say my obligatory disclaimer is that I am not a tax accountant. So for advice about your specific situation, consult a tax accountant.
And hopefully they know about this.
Well,
because,
we'll get into that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
So that's very possible that they may not have heard about it. So Section 174 is the part of the U.S. tax code that deals with what are called research and experimental costs. And in this section of the tax code, it specifically says that any amount paid or incurred in connection with the development of any software shall be treated as a research or experimental expenditure. So even if you don't think of it as R&D, like, I think people think about R&D and they think about like pharmaceuticals, for example, right? Even if you don't think of building a new product with existing code and frameworks and tools as R&D, or you don't think of adding a new feature as R&D, the tax code likely does. And so why we're talking about this is that for basically forever, at least this past 60, 70 years, which is forever in software businesses, companies had the choice between taking those as expenses right away, which is probably what the vast majority of us do, right? You have a developer who makes $100,000 salary. It's just all an expense. You spend $1,000 on servers to build a new product. It's all an expense. It could be an expense, or it could be amortized, which is a accountant speak for saying spreading it out over several years. Amortizing and capitalizing things, like you might be more familiar with that with like a laptop, for example, right? Because you buy a laptop, you use it for 5 years. So you only get to take out, say 20% of that per year as an expense. So until 2022, companies had the choice, either expensing or amortizing. And so nobody, like in our world, really ever thought much about this. But then what happened was in 2017, when Congress passed the tax changes, one of the ways they paid for those changes was to say that starting in 2022, all research and experimental expenditures, which includes all software development, must be amortized. And this was basically a sort of legislative sleight of hand to pay for those tax cuts. But nobody in Congress thought it was a good idea to do this. Nobody thought it was good tax policy. And they intended to repeal it from the beginning. So they would basically just, keep sort of reverting it and pushing that problem out into the future. The problem is that they didn't revert it as they had planned on, even though this has broad bipartisan support. And so big companies think, your Microsoft, Intels of the world, they have been writing letters to Congress since 2019 and engaging with Congress on this since 2019 about, hey, remember how you passed this really bad tax change and then you said you were going to fix it before it took effect? Let's just make sure that's still on your list, right? They have been doing that since 2019. So fast forward to end of 2022.
Although tech companies aren't the most popular across Congress right now.
Right. Right.
So,
yeah.
Which is probably why this is
part of why we have to get involved.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So fast forward to 2022. This is seen as a big business issue. In Congress, there's still broad bipartisan support. Seriously, evenly bipartisan support in the House and Senate. And I think there's over 100 co-sponsors in the House. When do you get this kind of broad bipartisan support for anything these days? To revert this and fix it. And it fell apart at the last minute because it got tangled in with other issues. It was seen as a big business thing. So then it had to be played off of other things that aren't big business things. And, and then didn't get done. So Congress recesses for Christmas and then comes back to the new session of Congress. And it's been introduced again. But the problem now is that it has taken effect for tax year 2022. And so now we small business owners are starting to get our taxes done, or have already had our taxes done, and have had our accountants tell us your taxes, like in your case, Landon, have gone up over 400%. And the thing about this is that since Congress was widely expected to revert this before it took effect, the IRS still has not issued full guidance on it. They have not defined what software development is. But the conservative approach that big companies with very well-paid experts are taking and have been warning about is that all software development is now falling under this R&E, which includes your developer salaries for the time they spend building new products or building new features of existing products. It doesn't seem like bug fixes fall under this, which is kind of good news. But on the other hand, who is time tracking the time they spend fixing bugs versus building a new feature? And if you're improving a page with a confusing UI, is that a bug fix or is it a new feature? Like the IRS has never had to define software development to that level. And they won't be able to do this work yet because it was expected to be reverted. They did issue a letter at the beginning of this year to accountants that was like, hey, by the way, remember that this is happening, but we are still waiting on full guidance. And so there's a lot of people who don't even know that this is happening because their accountants aren't aware or they haven't told them about it yet, which means that if this doesn't get reverted, if you haven't heard from your accountant yet, it's likely that you will hear from them in 6 months when these rules are out. And then it turns out you may have filed wrong for 2022 and now owe additional taxes plus penalties. So
And it could be huge penalties too, because it's like
Huge.
what you just
Yeah.
heard. You didn't hear that wrong. 400% increase. That's our I mean, that's insane. So if you're off by that much, like just imagine what that penalty could look like, depending on the size of the business. I mean, it could be pretty big.
I mean, it's massive, right? And one thing, you know, with Congress is, so nobody agrees this is a good idea, right? They all, you know, like by and large, there's agreement that this should be fixed. The problem is that, you know, like tax bills are never voted on their own in Congress, right? It always has to be part of something else. And it's kind of getting kicked down the road. And they're like, well, you know, maybe we could do this in September, or maybe we just push it to December again. Because they're like, well, you know, a big company, they can shoulder an extra 10, 20 million in taxes. And then when we revert it, we'll refund them. They can handle that. A small company that does not have access to capital markets, that can barely get a bank to give the owners a mortgage, never mind like a line of credit or small business loans, right? Because they don't understand software. We don't have a physical building that they can seize if we don't pay them, right? They just, I'm preaching to the choir on this one. But like, we don't have that kind of access. And so this is a very real problem, which is why I am organizing people to send a coalition letter to Congress so that they understand that this is having an effect on small software businesses now, and that we urgently need to do something about this. This can't just keep getting pushed down the line and bundled in with other things. It's not a big business issue. It is a small business issue that is impacting small businesses across the country, who people now, like, I mean, I've talked to people who are saying they're using their personal credit cards to pay their taxes. They're using like lines of credit. They're like laying people off. They're freezing hiring. Like it's bad. And the thing is that we have to fight this because everybody loves small businesses. Like just everybody loves us, right? And we are getting run over by a truck by this. And so if there's any hope of getting this through Congress, we have to speak up on this. We can't just assume that the big companies with, you know, their, you know, people that talk to Congress and whatnot are going to take care of this. Like they've tried, they've been working on this for 4 years and they haven't made it happen. And so now, you know, it's kind of an underdog story at this point, but I believe we can do it, right? Because there are a lot of us, I mean, and we are all over the country.
That's what it does. It does, like, I guess that's not, it resurfaces that dynamic where the power of the voice is like proportional to the size of the biggest player in the crowd. Like there's so many small businesses, and every politician, whether they believe it or not, is going to go say they support small business. But the fact is there's not like a voice. We don't have like a unified, I mean, which is obviously what you're trying to do here, but
right. We are a pretty disorganized bunch. Like, I mean,
yeah, it's like everyone
the
is
first
whispering
challenge
to each
is
other,
like
you know?
find everybody. Yeah. And then like, and so we set this goal of 1,000 signatures on this because individually we are not very strong. Individually, I mean, none of us have any representation in DC. None of us are part of trade associations. We don't play the DC game, right? I mean, companies don't usually start hiring their first like DC people until they're at like tens of millions, if not more, in annual revenue, right? Like, and like the reason why I'm the one doing all of this is because I used to work in DC. And like, I remember it was like, everyone was like, oh my God, Facebook got their first public policy person. Like, wow, that is like Snapchat has a public policy. Like, it was like kind of like a big deal. And you know, so I started out in that world and still have, a lot of friends there. And so that's why I'm in this sort of weird position of the person who is organizing this. But we have to do it and it sounds so dramatic, but like, it's like an existential threat to anyone who builds and sells software, but especially small businesses. And
an unforced error. Like that's what it, to me,
yeah, they didn't even want to do it in the first place.
Yeah,
like,
it's
just
so
like, why? Like we have to, like, this is like, why are you putting small businesses through all of this pain and potential bankruptcy because you didn't get your stuff together in time? Like, it's almost like we kind of got to show up there with like a wooden spoon. We're like, come on guys, let's do it.
And that's what, so like the fact that it was sort of like everyone, including the accounting community, expected it to be gone, so no one really talked about it, which I understand.
Yeah, the IRS didn't even
not
like,
no one talked
write
about
the,
it, but like in our
the
world, no one
rules
talked
for
about it.
implementing it.
Yeah, I didn't even know about it till
So we're basically
maybe
like,
3 months
hey,
ago.
yeah, like you just incurred a giant bill, like is how we're finding out, right? It's like, we didn't mention this because we thought it'd be gone, but now that it's not, we have to let you know that you actually owe us a bunch of money. That's kind of, and also I'm fascinated by the fact that there is no guidance, like this sort of, the lack of dialogue between like the IRS as like a governing body and then like, Congress. I find that it's not entertaining in a good way sometimes, but they're like, we're not going to change. We can't get this thing passed, so you guys have to do it. But like the people who are in charge of telling you how haven't told you how yet. So
I think it's because
figure it out.
everybody in DC expected this to be reverted. Nobody expected it to take effect. And, you know, I don't know how those, you know, those wires usually work in DC when it comes to implementing regulations, but usually they're pretty on the ball about it. This is an extraordinary situation. And it also, I've heard from some people who said, oh, well, you know, Congress didn't revert it last year, but they probably will this year, so just don't worry about it.
That's what I've been, yeah.
That is not the right approach to take. We have to worry about this. We have to get involved because we actually have a little bit of an advantage here that small businesses are very lovable. As you said, no politician is going to come out and say that they don't like small businesses. The problem is that, you know, they didn't really know that small software businesses existed, which, you know, can kind of forgive them because, you know, the rest of the tech community kind of looks down on us at points, right? Like, you know, we're not cool. We're not venture funded, right? We're not in California. Though Lord knows, I mean, those companies are also suffering right now because of SVB and everything going on there, right? So, I mean, nobody's in a good spot at the moment. And I wouldn't be surprised if they have their own letter at some point as well. But for right now, it's us, the small software businesses. But as you mentioned, there are small manufacturers, small biotechs, like there are a lot of small businesses that are getting seriously hammered, potentially to the point of extinction because of this. And we have to do something about it.
All right. I wanted to break away real quick just to talk about our sponsor for the week, Fetch. And it's fetchtruck.com. So this is a really cool product that I've used, that my neighbor uses all the time. And it's, you know, that challenge you run into where you have something big that you just purchased or something really big that you have to move and you have no way to move it because it's impossible to pick up and carry somewhere, or you don't have a truck or some sort of larger vehicle that you can, you know, move that stuff. And so Fetch makes it really easy for you to just go to their site or go to their app and basically just find a truck or van on demand. And they have all different types of trucks that you can, different vehicle sizes that, you know, depending on what you're moving, it just makes it really easy to be able to access that when you need it. But the real thing that I wanted to focus on that's really interesting to me as an entrepreneur is their partnership program. So if you have, you know, a truck or some sort of van that you already own, or you're thinking about, you know, maybe you're going to buy one, they have this really cool program where you can basically rent out your truck, rent out your van, and you don't have to do any work. You basically just sit there. They do all the marketing. They put the insurance on the cars. And obviously they have the marketplace for folks to find you. So they basically do all the work and you just sit there and rake in cash. So while you hear all these podcasts out there and all these different creators and entrepreneurs talking about, you know, buying a house and renting out, you know, for Airbnb and things like that, and that's how they make passive income, you know, that's great. And those are cool ways to make income. But sometimes they're not super practical, especially if, you know, maybe you don't have the money to kind of put a down payment on a home. And Fetch really makes it kind of, your barrier to entry is a little bit lower, which I think is really cool. And, you know, I love that they do all the work for you essentially. So this is just a great way to kind of, you know, get a business off the ground. And, you know, maybe it's not something you focus on full time. Maybe it's just a part-time thing, but, you know, being able to make up to $30,000 per year renting out your truck or your van is pretty insane. And so they have a ton of great resources on how you can do this, a full kind of partner program guide as well. If you go to fetchtruck.com, and they have a little link at the top that says list your truck. That's where you can find it. If you have any other questions about this, they are super helpful. So you can reach out to them on their site. And again, that's fetchtruck.com. And it's list your truck. So definitely check them out. And at a very minimum, the next time you have to move something large or you have to pick something up, definitely go to the site and give it a try. All right, back to the show. Well, yeah, you have like the sort of impending crisis, which is what's happening this year with with all of our taxes, which could, like you said, put people out of business. It could mean that you have to go like try to get loans to pay off your tax bills. It could mean layoffs. It could mean all these different things. But then there's also like if this just sticks and we have this for the next, couple years, 3 years, 4, like whatever, then people aren't going to start companies here in America. Like it's just not, I say here, I know you're not even, you're not,
I have a U.S.
you're in
company.
Copenhagen.
So
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You're based here, but yeah, we, so, I mean, like it's like something that has never crossed my mind is like, incorporating somewhere else, but like that has crossed my mind at this point. Like, obviously that's not the initial thing you're going to do, but if this sticks, if this stays for the foreseeable future, you have to start thinking about those things because it is so devastating for a small business like ours, who, like you said, doesn't have just like this massive, amount of cash in the bank and funding. So yeah, there's a lot of really bad things to happen this year. And then there's going to continue to be bad things. And do you want to have you don't want to have tech businesses being started in the United States? You don't want to have companies trying to innovate in medicine and these different things in the United States? Like, of course you do. Like, we need to get this done. Why is this not happening? But the thing I worry about is, the saying is time kills all deals. Well, people keep, our accountant and other, firms and stuff, they keep saying like, it's probably going to get repealed like before the extension deadline and all these things. And I look at all the problems we have going on right now and things that are like on the table being discussed in Washington that aren't that are really important things. And like, I just look at those as like potential things that could just, are more important, are going to get more exposure. And this is just going to continue to get kicked down the curb. And it's just not going to to me, it feels like it's not going to happen. And I'm trying to do everything I can. And obviously that's why we're having this podcast and while you're doing everything you're doing. And, but it's definitely scary for sure. I'm worried about it.
I think if you get a tax bill that's 400 times higher than you expected, I think it is very natural to feel defeated. Right. I mean, and we have to fight it. And I am working the connections I've got in DC. People are very receptive to having us as part of the conversation. These letters work. I mean, the small biotechs who sent a letter, like that was mentioned by a senator in a hearing last week. Like these make a difference. Like I just checked this morning that the number of co-sponsors on the bill, the Senate bill, it started out at 14. Last week I checked, it was 18. I just checked an hour ago and now it's 21. So like there's things are happening. Like, there's a Senate bill that usually means there's going to be a House bill as well. There was a House bill last year with over 100 co-sponsors. Like, I think we can fight this. I don't think it'll get reverted if it stays the course as it is right now with the large tech companies being the only ones in the conversation. We need to insert ourselves and basically try to be, try to get in there and unjam this.
So
Which I
and
guess that was
try
something I
to
was gonna
make
ask.
it clear that this is like an urgent crisis for small businesses.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, you have much more like familiarity with the goings on of like the attempts at getting rid of this thing. What do you expect? Like, if you could guess right now, like what shape is it going to be? Like, hey, this thing that was a thing, like it wasn't a thing, now it's a thing, now it's gone, or like what shape do you think that'll actually take?
So there's
guess.
been a little bit written about this. And basically what happens is that tax never gets voted on its own. It's always in another larger bill. And as of right now, as of things look right now, the first opportunities will be in September, either in the Farm Bill or potentially the FAA reauthorization bill or the continuing resolution to fund the government in September. If it doesn't happen then, it could also happen in December at the end of the year again. Now that assumes things stay as they are, right? So it's possible, I mean, the economy isn't doing great right now. We're sort of got a banking crisis going on. We could end up in a recession and there might need to be a stimulus bill sooner. So it's hard to say what's going to happen here. But this is what people kind of have been writing about, is sort of what the calendar looks like for the year. There's also this whole debt ceiling thing, right? There's a lot of other issues going on. And I think for this effort, it's important for us to just communicate that this is having an urgent impact. And we can't begin to get involved in the machinations of Congress and how they put deals together and how things get fit in where, right? And it's kind of just, it's not productive for us to try to do so. Because if we just make it clear that this is an urgent problem that needs an urgent solution and we get a lot of people on board with it, then they can figure something out. That's what the priority is right now. And so that's why I'm trying to get 1,000 signers on this letter. The small biotechs had 500. And so, I don't know, I'm a little bit competitive. I'm like, we can do 1,000, right? And then they've got 1,500 small businesses who have said something about this, right? And the thing about this is that this is not just something that impacts companies that have employees. This is not just something that impacts people who are working full time. If you have a side project making $10,000 a year, this is going to impact you as well. This impacts everybody who builds and sells software.
Well, that's the thing too. Every time this gets brought up, I feel and you've been in a lot of these conversations too, and different Slack groups and things, even on Twitter. And when we bring this up, people start asking questions, or they start saying well, this doesn't really this doesn't impact me. We don't do a lot of R&D. Even, we're a software company, but we don't do a lot of R&D. And it's no, you don't understand.
Not according to the tax code.
Not according to this code. Yeah. You do R&D or R&E, I guess. So I think, I feel the first part of this is just getting the knowledge, getting this information out to people so that they understand what they're up against. Cause I think, again, I just think a lot of people either don't know about it or they don't understand it. And to be fair, no one really understands it because, again, they haven't given proper guidance. But from what we have, people just understanding that and what they're up against. And then, I guess from there, obviously we're talking about getting this letter out to them with signatures. What else can people do to try to make their voice heard?
So let me give you a little bit of the kind of approach here that we're taking. The first goal is to get this letter out. The deadline for signatures is April 10th so that we can get it to Congress before tax day, which is great in terms of impact. It's also great in terms of media coverage. So we're going to get this letter to them before tax day. After that, we see kind of what the reaction is. And it will probably make sense for people to start talking with their representatives and senators and their staff directly. People who are have already, sort of joined in on this effort, they have already been connected with Hill staff in particular offices about this. their stories are already getting transmitted on the Hill. Like when you go to ssballiance.org, there's a thing that says, how is this impacting you? You know, are you laying people off? Are you taking out lines? Like how is it? Like those snippets that people are putting there, those are being anonymously sent to people who are talking on the Hill about this and getting there. So they are already hearing people are laying people off, people are taking out loans. But then there will get to a point when people may also need to speak directly to congressional staff. So we will get to that point. It's, again, the focus right now is to make it clear that this is an urgent problem and hope that Congress finds the soonest opportunity to fix this before they have a wave of bankruptcies of small software businesses and layoffs at much larger tech businesses, right? Like this isn't something we're talking about as part of this, but if you think about a developer salary no longer being an expense and tech companies are already starting to lay people off, that's only going to get worse if developers all of a sudden become way more expensive than their other employees. This is what we can do about it. This is what we have control over. And so if you are concerned about it, if you are already getting that tax bill, if you haven't gotten the tax bill yet, now you're worried about it. If you just own a software business in the US and you're a US citizen, sign the letter and then tell everybody you know who has a small software business to sign the letter as well. And then we will take it from there.
Should we do some like, I'm just, as you're like pumping me up, I'm like ready to go, like quit
we need to put
selling,
some, like,
selling for my own business and sell like, yeah, like should we, my first thought was like, oh, should we like run some ads or something on this to like, like, is there some audience we could run ads against? And then also like, are there certain like kind of target individuals that may have like a little bit larger audience or voice that we could be trying to get in front of and get them talking about it? Like, I'm just trying to think of some different things we could do to sort of amplify this. Because, you know, I only have so many people that pay attention to what I do or what I say on Twitter or whatever. So, like, are there different, I don't know, and maybe this is something we talk through offline as sort of like a outbound strategy here. But, yeah, like, how do we get this amplified? Because I feel like even with all the stuff that we've done, you know, the tweets we put out, like all these different things, I feel like there's still not that much chatter about it.
So first, you're literally having me on your podcast right now. So that is helping to spread the word
That's
in a
one
huge
thing,
way.
yeah.
Right. Not only in terms of the people who are listening right now, but then they go and share it somewhere. Also, it's going to go on the website for ssballiance.org, which is, again, more when people hear like, what the heck is this thing? And like, what is this website? Right. Like all of the media coverage of this is going on that page so people could see, I mean, social proof, right? Oh, wait, this actually is a real thing that I should be worried about. And here's Made with Grit and Build Your SaaS and Startups for Rest of Us and the Wall Street Journal talking about this. There are a lot of, I mean, people have been just kind of throwing their connections at me, and that has been amazing. And so people writing LinkedIn posts and Twitter and sending out in their, you know, private Slack communities and whatnot, like all of that is helping. But quite frankly, the reason why you haven't seen too much of a push is because it wasn't until right now that I had a very clear and specific ask of people that would have a direct impact on Congress. We have this letter. We need to get this letter out. I've also spent a lot of the last 2 weeks just talking to experts, trying to figure out, like, what does this really mean? What is the situation in DC? Like, what does this mean? What does that mean? Right? Like, so I've been intentionally kind of quiet, like that tweet thread that you mentioned, like that was being reviewed by professionals. So to make sure that everything was accurate. And that took a week. So there's been a lot going on behind the scenes, but it's not until now that there was really something very clear for people to do and share. And so now is when we hit the gas. The gas has intentionally not been hit until now.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the one other kind of like, I guess, contingency planning. So like, obviously goal number one and focus number one is like, let's make this thing, let's change what's happening and save ourselves and our fellow business owners. Assuming that takes a while, like in the best case scenario, that's going to take some time. And in the worst case scenario, that time horizon gets really, really long. How are you thinking about contingency planning, like for your own business, or is that something you're just kind of like ignoring for now? How are you engaging with that part?
my accountants are also in the camp of this is a giant hairball that we need to figure out. Like, so I don't even know personally what the impact is. I just know that it's going to be bad. And I know enough about this to know that it's going to be bad. So for me personally, I am pouring all of that nervous energy into this project and doing my darndest to make sure that it doesn't happen.
That's
because
awesome.
for me, in times of uncertainty, I throw myself into action. So, and it makes me feel better to help other people. So,
and I'm hopeful that like that's sort of
so
a
that's
trait
the plan.
across the board. Yeah.
is make it not a problem. That's the plan, and we're sticking to it.
I like that plan.
So.
I like that.
Yeah, once you get over how horrible it is, and you just sort of like just think about it constantly for like like 3 days, you're just like, oh, like just basking in it. Then it's sort of like, okay, well, this isn't going to help, right? Like what can we do to try to prevent this or do something to change it? And at the end of the day, we can all we can do is do our best. And if nothing happens, nothing happens. But, at least we did our best.
I don't think that's going to happen. Like,
I don't either.
I've been saying, like, small businesses, we are the cute kittens of the policy world, and we're getting run over, right? So we need to make it clear that this is happening, right? Like, from Congress's perspective, we've only come out of the woodwork in the last 2 weeks. Other companies have been talking about this for 4 years. So we are very new on the scene, but we can make an impact. And the more people sign the letter, the more small business owners sign the letter, the better we are, the more of an impact we're going to have. I don't know. It's an existential threat. Like we just have to. We have to throw whatever we got at it.
I'm thankful for you in our community. We have you're uniquely qualified to sort of like bridge this. I'm guessing you never thought that you would those two worlds would collide in such a dramatic way. But we're grateful that you're here representing us.
I had this moment yesterday when I was writing the letter that was like, holy, like I'm writing a letter to Congress right now. Like they're going to read this. And then the next moment was, oh my God. And I can hear my public policy analysis professor from college telling me this isn't concise enough and it's way too long. And he would give me a C on this. God, what did I learn in that class? Like take me back there. Right. I mean, cause I worked in DC for a couple of years and then, I sort of joke that I fled to the relative moral high ground of finance and then kind of settled into a nice life as a small software business owner and sort of left all that behind. And now it's coming full circle. So it's a weird thing. But we got to do it. And I don't know, we got to fight it, right? We can't just take it. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't think I've ever actually called my representatives before. Just cause I don't know. I just felt like it wouldn't matter or like there's such a range of issues, right? This one impacts you so directly that you're like, okay, well, whatever I have to do. Right. And I called them and, you get aides that answer the phone or whatever. You're not going to get the actual person. And they just seem to have no clue about this. Maybe they haven't talked to anybody else that has mentioned this. Like they're just like totally clueless. So hopefully, if we all start calling them, right, like they'll start to get a clue. They'll start to see a pattern and trend, I guess.
When you call Congress, by the way, like they are required to keep tabs on every issue that people call about. That
do they record it?
Like they don't record the phone call, but they literally have like Google spreadsheets of like we had so and so people call in about this issue, and like so we had 10 people call in about this issue related to this bill and like whatnot. The thing is before there's I didn't start saying anything about this until there was a Senate bill, because if you call in at that point, there's really it doesn't really fit in the system to say like, oh, we had Landon and he called in on S866. great. Like that's the bill
You can't
number.
like upvote the right bill. Yeah, exactly.
There's nothing to upvote, right? So,
Yeah.
so what we're going to do with this letter is we're going to send the letter, but then we're going to have everybody, as many signers as possible, send it to their members with, you know, that sort of anecdote about how it's impacting them personally, which is again going to count as another contact, right? So whenever you call, whenever you fill out the contact form, it may feel like it's disappearing into a black hole, but those actually, like, they do keep tabs on every unique correspondence. So if you take this letter and then send it to your congressperson with some, you know, with something that makes it unique, right, compared to another letter, you add in a couple of sentences on your own experience, right, that counts as a unique contact. And especially when we get to the point of this being close to being voted on, that's going to be really, really key. But the staff are important. They're a very, very important part of it. It's just a matter of getting to the right staff member. And so that will be something down the line that, you know, just depending on how things shake out in Congress and whatnot, like people have already heard from me that's like, hey, like there's this tax staffer that you should talk to and here's their email. Like, so,
Nice.
That is part of this as it's sort of strategically relevant. But I mean, things are moving, right? There's more co-sponsors. I think that's the thing that people are very receptive to us being part of this. And we have, you know, an ability to make a direct impact in a way that groups of people who are not normally represented in DC don't normally get to. So we got to make the most of it and get 1,000 signatures on that letter.
Absolutely. Well, are we
So
close?
yes, if you have not
How do
signed
we
it,
get this
please
thing
go do
going?
that.
Yeah, please, if you're
Yes.
listening to
Okay.
this,
So
please go
if
sign
you
it.
are a U.S. small business software, if you are a U.S. citizen, small software business owner in the U.S., go to ssballiance.org to sign the letter and sign up to stay updated. And by signing up to stay updated means I will send you an email whenever there is something that you should do or you should know about this. Nobody else is getting your email. Nobody else is seeing your information except for the information I tell you is going on the letter, which is your company name and the city and state of your company. ssballiance.org. Sign up, share it, tell people personally. Reach out to your founder friends personally and ask them to sign it.
Perfect. And we'll
Let's do it.
include all these links, all the links to the tweet threads, to the website that you can sign, to everything in the show notes and on YouTube and all the different places. Thank you so much, Michele, for coming on. And also just, you know, again, thank you for doing all of this and like being kind of the leader of this charge. I think we're going to get it done. We just gotta keep pushing. So we'll do our part, and hopefully everybody listening will as well. And then we'll have maybe we could do a follow-up episode after this gets repealed.
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh, that
a
would be
victory
amazing.
tour.
A victory lap. Yes. Awesome. Well,
All right. Thanks, guys.
all right. That's it. Cheers.
Thanks, Michele.